In the last lecture, we created a profit margin, and in this one, we are going to look at the Sumx. Let's come back to Excel. Let us define our problem statement first. So you would see here that we have the sales column and the quantity column. What I want to do is to divide the total sales value by the units sold, which means that here you notice that my sales value is 261 and the quantity is 2, which means that my per unit sale price would be equal to the sales amount divided by quantity. Now, of course, if you wanted to do this inside the table, that would also have been possible, but we don't want to do that. But just so that you can see, if you wanted to find the sale per unit, we could have written equal to sales divided by quantity, and it would have given us the sales per unit. But this means that we have to go back to our original data and to do this calculation, which I want to avoid. So we come to our pivot table. I'm going to make a new pivot table below this one. And let's remove profit, sales, and everything else. So we just want to keep the subcategory here. What we want to do here is to click on Power Pivot. I wanted to click on Measure and New Measure. Let's call this my per unit sales. Now, usually what we want to do is we want to find out that on an average, what is the per unit sales. So if you want to do Sumx, you can, but I would ask you to do average X because that is more relevant for this particular example. Look at the explanation. It says that average X will calculate the average of a set of expressions evaluated over a table. Let me explain that. Now there are two different arguments that you have. We have the table and we have the expression. Now what is the table? Of course, table is HMC orders. What is the expression? My expression is my sales column divided by my quantity column like this. Let's check the formula. Everything seems okay. Click on OK and you notice the result comes as 55. Now, I'm sure all of you want to verify this number, so let's go and do that. Remember, we are looking at accessories. So I'll go back to orders. Let's say this is my sales per unit, which is equal to sales divided by my quantity. Then we want to look at only one subcategory, which is accessories. So this is the sales per unit. And if you find out the average of all these numbers, you will get. Let me just check once. Okay. As a matter of fact, we can't just find the average like this. We will have to use a subtotal and then find the average and then use the entire column and we get 55.35. Let's verify the result. If you want to be sure till a decimal point, you can notice 55.3566. Take a minute and think about what we have done. We have basically saved us a number of different steps. That means that now we don't have to go back to the data, create a new column called sales per unit, and then come back and find out the average. We can simply find out the average like this. Let us go back to the measure. So we have our per unit sales. And once again, what are we doing? We are selecting the table and we are writing the expression. Now the expression is a simple arithmetic operation, which means that it's the sales column divided by the quantity. Now you must be wondering, what if we write the aggregation? For example, the sum divided by the sum. Check the formula. Everything seems okay. When you press OK and close, you notice that the result is not really changing. Now, this is a little hard to explain because you must be wondering what's the big deal. But look very carefully. Even though it seems that the result is not changing, it actually is. Do you see the value for accessories? It says 56.24338. I'm sorry. You can see it in the formula bar, 56.24338. 62.19326. Let me undo it a few times. So measure, manage measure, profit per unit sales, edit. And here we want to not take an aggregation, we simply want to take the column divided by the column. And because we have already verified this result, you know that 55.35 is the correct result. Now, why is this happening? The reason we don't want to choose an aggregation is because we don't want to aggregate anything. We simply want to do a row by row iteration. That means we want to find out the sales divided by quantity for each single row in our data set. And then we want to average it for every accessory, for appliance, for art, binders, and so on. So take some time, think a little bit about it. Average X is a row by row iteration. That means that we are not taking the total sales and the total profit and dividing it. We are simply taking the sales and profit for each individual transaction for accessories and then dividing it. And when we get all the numbers, then we are finding out the average. Now, sometimes the result is so similar that even if you write the sum of sales and the sum of profit, it seems as if you're getting the correct result or something very close to it. But don't make that mistake. Please make sure that whenever you're using average X, sum X, or count X, you are always selecting the column divided by the column. And the reason for this is average X will return, so average X is the average of a set of expressions evaluated over a table, which is a row by row iteration. Now, this is also a good point for you to see how to use the DAX.guide website. As you can see, DAX is simple, but it can also get complex very quickly. So let me go to average X, and you can see a very nice detailed explanation given here. So it says that the table is containing the rows for which the expression will be evaluated, and the expression is the expression to be evaluated for each row of the table. So do you see this, everyone? When we were finding the profit margin, what were we doing? We were not finding the profit margin for each individual record. We were finding the profit margin for the total profit divided by the total sales. But how is average X different? It is being evaluated over an entire table. That means there is a row context. It is being evaluated row by row by row for every single row in the data. Like I said in the beginning, it takes some time to get the hang of it, but keep on practicing. And once you really understand the difference between a profit margin and average X, it would be very clear, and the rest of the course will become simple.